I don't think there was a single moment in my childhood when I wasn't gently reminded that I came second. Not in a dramatic way, no family meeting where they spelled it out for me. Just a slow, quiet drip. 1,000 tiny instructions, glances, decisions that all whispered the same truth. My younger sister Emma was the one who needed more. More attention, more understanding, more forgiveness. And I was the one expected to give it. If she broke something of mine, my mother Linda would look at me and sigh. "She's younger, Riley. Just let it go." If Emma threw a fit over a toy I was using, Linda wouldn't scold her. She'd turn to me almost gently and say, "You know how she gets. Just let her have it." Even when I didn't want to, I did because I was older, because I knew better, because they made sure I understood that Emma's emotions mattered more than fairness. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing I need people to understand. It wasn't one massive betrayal. It was the slow, careful construction of a world where my needs were always optional. The pattern started early and never changed. It just grew more complicated as we grew older. What began as toys and tantrums turned into expectations and rules that were never equally applied. I wasn't just the older sister. I was the buffer, the fixer, the one who could take it. And in that quiet daily sacrifice, I started to disappear. I never screamed about it. I didn't rebel or throw things or demand to be seen. I adjusted. I learned to move around Emma's moods like she was a force of nature. I learned how to offer silence when I wanted to speak, how to give in before it became a fight, how to smile when I didn't win. And the worst part is, I believed that made me strong. I carried that belief with me into adulthood, into every choice I made, into how I measured my worth. That if I could just keep things calm, carry the weight without complaint, they'd see me differently. They never did. By the time I turned 16, that quiet understanding had become law. If I wanted anything beyond the basics, a phone, decent clothes, a chance at independence, I had to earn it myself. So I found a weekend job. Then after school shifts, I stocked shelves, wiped tables, ran registers. I worked because no one else was going to give me anything, and I learned early not to ask. But when Emma turned 16, it was different. She didn't apply for jobs. She didn't even pretend to care about money. On her birthday, Tom, our father, handed her car keys, and Linda handed her a credit card. "Just focus on your studies, sweetheart," my mother said, brushing Emma's hair behind her ear like something out of a commercial. "We'll handle the rest." That was the phrase that never made an appearance in my life. "We'll handle it." For college, I applied for every scholarship I could find. I still came up short, so I borrowed. I rented the cheapest room I could find. I ate boxed pasta 5 nights a week and worked 2 part-time jobs just to stay afloat. I was tired in a way I didn't know how to explain because no one ever asked. Emma, meanwhile, got into a private university. Not just tuition, but housing, groceries, utilities. Everything was covered by Linda and Tom. She lived in a sunny off-campus apartment with white curtains and a balcony and never once had to skip a class because she was working a double. And when I asked Linda about it just once, gently, her response was calm and simple. "Emma isn't as strong as you, Riley. She needs more support." That line was the spine of their logic, the foundation for every unequal choice. It didn't matter how much I struggled. What mattered was that I could survive it. And I did. That was the problem. When Emma ran out of money, they bailed her out. When she totaled her car, they replaced it. When she maxed out her credit card buying things she didn't need, Tom paid it without even frowning. When I was hit with a surprise medical bill, urgent, terrifying, I called home, heart-pounding, thinking, maybe just this once. Linda sighed and said, "I wish we could help, honey, but things are tight right now. You'll figure it out?" I always figured it out, and they always let me. Eventually, I stopped asking not just for help, but for attention, for care, for acknowledgement. I stopped expecting to be anyone worth worrying about, and somehow that made things easier for them. When Jack Thompson proposed, I didn't cry. I laughed not because I didn't care, but because I hadn't expected anyone to choose me with that kind of certainty. It was a quiet moment, just the two of us on a rainy afternoon, and somehow it felt like I was finally being seen. For the first few weeks, I lived in that warmth. Planning the wedding felt surreal, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. A life where I could be the center of something without guilt. But as the date drew closer, something shifted. Subtle at first, Linda, my mother, started sighing in that practiced way of hers. Every time we mentioned the cost of catering or flowers, she'd tilt her head's soft voice just slightly too measured. Weddings are so expensive these days. It's such a shame really spending that much on just one day. She wasn't trying to talk me out of it. She just wanted me to feel guilty for being celebrated. Tom. My father was quieter but no less precise. "We've been making some sacrifices lately," he said one evening, looking over his glass of wine. "Things aren't as easy as they used to be, but you know we do what we can. Emma's had a rough year." I didn't say anything. I just nodded the way I always had. But something in my chest tightened, and Emma made no effort to hide how she felt. She rolled her eyes whenever the wedding came up, made loud comments about how ridiculous bridesmaid dresses were, scoffed when anyone mentioned a registry. She even joked that I was acting like a princess when I cried during a cake tasting. But what cut deepest was the look on her face whenever someone gave me their full attention, like my happiness was a threat, like my joy was stealing oxygen she thought belonged to her. Jack noticed first. One night while I was obsessing over the seating chart, he stood across from me, arms folded, watching. His voice was calm, but the edge in it was new. "They're going to pull something," he said. I looked up. "Who, my parents?" he said simply. I shook my head, tried to laugh. "Jack, come on, they can be selfish, sure, but it's our wedding. They wouldn't ruin our wedding." He didn't answer right away, just watched me steady. Then, he reached for his jacket, pulled out a sealed white envelope and set it on the table, just in case, he said. I didn't ask what was inside. I just looked at it, and for the first time, I wondered if Jack was right. The morning of the wedding felt too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you think maybe, just maybe, things might go right. The sky was clear. The florist arrived early. My dress fit like it was always meant for me. And for the first time in years, I let myself believe I was allowed to have something beautiful. Linda greeted me with a warm smile and a cup of tea, as if we did this all the time. She smoothed my hair like she used to when I was 5. "You look lovely, Riley," she said. Truly. Even Emma held back. She didn't roll her eyes, didn't sigh. She barely said anything at all. I took it as progress. The ceremony was soft and full vows, spoken through held breath, eyes glistening in the light. The air was thick with roses, champagne, and something I hadn't known. I'd been waiting for quiet approval. My mother clapped during the toasts. My father danced with me. Emma sat near the window and didn't complain when the music got loud. It was everything I hadn't known I wanted. A moment where I wasn't just tolerated, I was seen. And then there was the card. I found it just before walking down the aisle, tucked into my bouquet, a small ivory envelope with my name in Linda's handwriting. Inside was a short message. "No matter what today, you are our daughter and you are loved, Mom." It was vague, simple, but somehow it broke something open. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, she saw me. Not as Emma's shadow, not as the strong one who never asked for anything, just me. So when the music played and the room spun with people I loved, I let myself fall into the illusion. I smiled so hard my cheeks ached. I danced until my feet throbbed. I held Jack's hand like a lifeline. I told myself I'd been wrong to worry. They'd changed. They had to have changed, because surely no one would pretend so perfectly just to tear it all down. It happened just after the first dance. The band had taken a short break. The room had quieted into conversation and soft clinks of glass. I was still warm from the music, a little breathless, cheeks flushed from spinning with Jack beneath the lights. That's when Linda touched my arm. She was smiling too brightly, the kind of smile that meant she was about to say something she knew I wouldn't like but thought I might accept anyway. "Come with me a moment," she said, voice gentle, hands light. I followed her to a corner near the bar, away from the guests, where the candles flickered low. She took my hands in hers and squeezed them like she had something beautiful to share. "You look radiant," she said almost in a whisper. "It's a lovely evening." I waited. The pause wasn't casual. It was deliberate. Then she leaned in, her voice soft enough that no one else would hear. "We're keeping your gift money. Emma needs it more than you do. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I thought maybe I'd misunderstood that she'd said something else entirely, something harmless. But the way she kept smiling like she'd just handed me a blessing told me I'd heard her exactly right. I'm sorry, I asked finally. She sighed like this was difficult for her. Sweetheart, you don't need it, she said. You have Jack now. You're building a life together. Emma's struggling, and it's only fair that she gets a little help. My fingers had gone cold. The hum of the reception blurred into a low drone behind me. I was still holding her hands, and I hated that I hadn't pulled away yet. That money wasn't yours to touch, I said. My voice came out low flat. Linda blinked just once. Her smile didn't drop, but something in it tightened. We're your parents, she said like that explained everything. In this family, we help each other. That was when I understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't temporary blindness or a lapse in judgment. This was exactly what she believed, that I was a resource to be tapped, that Emma's needs would always outweigh my own. And even here, even on my wedding day, my joy, my celebration, my moment, she still expected me to hand it over just like I always had. I didn't know he was standing behind me until I heard his voice. It was quiet, measured, but there was something in it that made the air go still. Good thing we planned for this, Jack said. I turned. He was calm, hands in his pockets, eyes steady on Linda. Not angry, not surprised, just ready. Her smile faltered just slightly. What do you mean? She asked, still holding on to her expression like it might shield her. Jack didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out the envelope, the one he'd given me weeks ago, the one I hadn't opened. He held it between two fingers and extended it to her like an offering. Go ahead, he said. Open it. Tom had joined us now. He stood just behind Linda, arms crossed, jaw tight. His eyes narrowed at Jack like he was sizing him up, but said nothing. Linda hesitated, then took the envelope with carefully practiced grace. She slid a nail beneath the flap and pulled out a stack of papers. I watched her scan the first page. Her hands didn't shake. Not yet. But I saw the stillness in her face, the tightening around her mouth, the way her breath caught halfway through the second paragraph. Tom leaned in to read over her shoulder. I saw his brow crease. What the hell is this? He asked. Jack's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It's a notarized legal declaration, he said, signed 3 weeks ago. It states that all wedding gifts, monetary or otherwise, are legally the property of Riley and me. Linda blinked. Jack continued. Any attempt to withhold, redirect, or access those funds without our consent constitutes theft and will be prosecuted. The silence after that was thick enough to choke on. Linda looked at me now, not with sweetness, not with that gentle condescension, but with a flicker of something I hadn't seen in her before. Uncertainty. You wouldn't take us to court, she said, barely above a whisper. We're family. Jack smiled, small, controlled. Oh, I would, he said, and he would. I could see it in the way he stood, not defiant, not angry, just unwavering. He had drawn a line, and he would not let them step over it. Tom's mouth opened, then closed again. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. For once, I wasn't the one explaining, defending, or softening the blow. I just stood beside my husband and let them sit with the reality they'd never expected, that they had pushed too far and that someone was finally pushing back. The silence didn't last long. Emma stepped forward, her heels clicking too sharply against the floor. Her face was flushed lips, tight eyes wide with disbelief. She looked between the envelope in Linda's hand and the unreadable expression on Jack's face. Then she cracked. This isn't fair, she shouted, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. You're married now, Riley. You don't even need that money. You have a husband, a future, everything, and I have nothing. Her voice rose higher with every word, each sentence more breathless than the last. I'm struggling, and you don't even care. I didn't answer. I just watched her. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel shock. I felt something colder. Because in that moment it hit me, she meant it. She wasn't lashing out. She wasn't being manipulative. She wasn't throwing a tantrum to get her way. She truly, deeply believed that she had a right to what was mine, to the money, to the moment, to anything I had that she didn't, because that's how it had always been. Her pain, real or imagined, mattered more than my boundaries. Her struggle, self-inflicted or not, was always more urgent than my stability. I'd spent years hoping she'd grow out of it, that one day she'd wake up and realize she wasn't the center of the universe, that she'd stop asking, that she'd finally learn to carry her own weight. But as I watched her, now shoulders trembling, fists clenched, tears streaking her face like a child denied dessert, I knew the truth. She was never going to change, and I was done waiting for her to. Tom stepped forward so fast it startled even Linda. His face was red, his mouth tight, eyes hard as stone. For a moment, he looked like he might explode, not just with anger, but with something deeper, something wounded. "I have never been so ashamed of you," he spat. "Not in my life." I didn't move. I didn't flinch, didn't fold, didn't look away. I met his eyes, steady, calm, the way I had never dared to before, and let his words hang in the air like smoke that no longer choked me. The shame he was trying to hand me didn't fit anymore. I didn't say it out loud, but the silence between us said enough. "You don't get to be ashamed of the daughter you never protected." Jack took a step closer, his voice low but sharp like a blade that didn't need to be lifted to draw blood. "If you try to take 1 cent from us," he said, "we will see you in court." There was no heat in his voice, no anger, just certainty. And that's what made it land. Linda's lips parted like she might say something, but no words came. Emma let out a frustrated sob behind her, but no one turned to her now. Even Tom said nothing more, because for the first time, they understood the math had changed. There would be no pleading, no compromise, no playing on guilt or history, or the 1,000 quiet ways they'd trained me to fold. There was only this, a daughter who didn't need their approval, a husband who would stand beside her, and a line they would not cross again. We walked away without a word. The music behind us had picked up again, strings and soft laughter trying to fill the space that had cracked wide open. But to me, the hall felt hushed, as if the air itself knew something had shifted. Jack's hand was warm in mine, steady, certain. My spine lengthened with each step. I didn't glance back. I didn't need to until I felt her fingers close around my wrist. The grip was too familiar, tight but trembling. Riley. My mother's voice was small, barely more than a breath. I turned. She looked unrecognizable. Her eyes were wide, her composure gone. The practiced grace she'd worn like a second skin for decades had fallen away. What was left was a woman unraveling. "You don't mean this," she whispered. "We're your family." I didn't answer right away. For once, I let the silence settle on her shoulders. I let her sit in it, the weight of her words, the hollowness behind them. I let her feel the truth she had never wanted to see. Then I spoke, not loud, not cruel, just steady. "You were never my family," I said, tilting my head. "You were Emma's." Her face went still, like the words had struck her across the mouth. Her hand dropped from my wrist as if it had been burned. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The collapse wasn't loud. It was quiet, almost invisible, but I saw it all. I saw the way her shoulders slumped, the way her fingers twitched as if trying to grab something that had already slipped through. The way her eyes flicked to Jack, not with anger now, but with disbelief. She had never imagined this moment, not once. She'd always assumed I'd circle back, that no matter what they took, I'd come home eventually. But this time, I wasn't walking away in silence. I was walking away with everything I had built on my own, and I wasn't leaving the door cracked. We kept walking, step by step, breath by breath, away from the people who had once called themselves my family. Behind us, the reception hummed faintly laughter, clinking glasses music. A soundtrack for someone else's version of the day. Not ours. Not anymore. And then I heard it. The scuffle of hurried footsteps, the sharp whisper of a breathless voice. "Riley, please." It was Linda again, her words chasing me, desperate now. I didn't turn around. Behind her, Emma's voice climbed into a shriek. Something about how I was ruining everything, how she deserved better, how I had stolen the spotlight. Then came Tom, low and furious, cursing under his breath. no longer trying to hide his rage, only trying to hold together whatever pride he thought he still had. It all came at once, the pleading, the outrage, the fury, a perfect storm of the old pattern. Except this time I wasn't standing in the middle of it. I didn't turn around. Not to Linda's cracking voice, not to Emma's tantrum, not to Tom's bitterness, because they weren't speaking to me. They were speaking to the version of me they had created, the one who apologized, who sacrificed, who stayed. But she didn't exist anymore. That girl, the one who waited her whole life to be seen to be chosen, she had finally chosen herself. Jack squeezed my hand, once quiet, solid present, and that was all I needed. I walked on, past the voices, past the wreckage, past the years I had spent begging for scraps. I didn't need a final word. I didn't need revenge. I didn't even need closure. Some things end not with confrontation, but with a silence so final it leaves nothing behind. And in that silence, I found a peace. There is no next section. This is where the story ends. No confrontation, no revenge. Just a woman who finally walked away forever. Riley's story reveals the profound impact of familial favoritism and the strength required to break free from its constraints. It teaches us that self-worth must be cultivated internally, not derived from others' approval, especially when their love is conditional. Riley's lifelong role as the overlooked sibling highlights how subtle, repeated inequities can erode one's sense of value. Yet her resilience working jobs, securing scholarships, and building her own life shows the power of self-reliance. The wedding gift incident underscores the necessity of setting boundaries even with family to protect personal achievements. Jack's support and foresight with the legal declaration emphasize the importance of allies who validate and defend one's worth. Riley's final act of walking away, choosing silence over confrontation, illustrates that true liberation often comes from letting go, not seeking revenge. The story reminds us to recognize our own needs, stand firm against exploitation, and surround ourselves with those who see us fully. Ultimately, it's a lesson in reclaiming agency, finding peace in self-ownership, and understanding that family is not defined by obligation, but by mutual respect and love.
The funeral home director asked if I needed more time. I sat alone in the front pew, staring at the small white casket that held my son Marcus. 9 years old. Brain cancer. 18 months of treatments, hope, and watching him fight harder than any adult I'd ever known. "Where is your family?" the director asked gently. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No messages. Nothing from my parents, my sister Rachel, or anyone else who should have been there. Marcus had been their grandson, their nephew. For 9 years they'd watched him grow, celebrated his birthdays, promised they'd always be there for him. The service was supposed to start at 2 p.m. It was now 2:45 p.m. "We can wait a few more minutes," the director offered. "No," I said quietly. "Let's begin." 23 people came to say goodbye to Marcus. His teachers from school. 3 families from his little league team. My neighbor Mrs. Chin, who used to give him homemade cookies. My co-workers who had covered my shifts during his final weeks. Not one member of my blood family. During the service, I thought about the last conversation I'd had with my parents 3 weeks earlier. Marcus was in hospice care and I'd called to update them on his condition. "How much longer do the doctors think?" Mom had asked. "Maybe days. Maybe weeks. But he's comfortable." "Well, keep us posted," Dad said. "Rachel's engagement party is this weekend, so we'll be pretty busy." Rachel's engagement party. While Marcus was dying. I buried my son on a Tuesday afternoon in October. The cemetery was quiet except for the sound of dirt hitting the casket. I stayed until the workers finished filling the grave, then drove home to an empty house. My phone buzzed as I walked through the door. A text from my sister Rachel. "Hope everything went okay today. Call me later." Hope everything went okay. My son's funeral. She talked about it like it was a dentist appointment. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table where Marcus used to do his homework. His math workbook was still open to page 47. Multiplication tables. He'd been so proud when he finally memorized the sevens. The next morning, I received a call from Marcus's pediatric oncologist. "I wanted to follow up about the trust fund documentation," Dr. Stevens said. The Children's Cancer Research Foundation needs the final paperwork to process the donation Marcus wanted to make. Marcus had insisted on setting up a trust fund during his final weeks. He'd saved every birthday check, every tooth fairy dollar, every allowance he'd ever received. $347 in total. He wanted it to go toward helping other kids with cancer. "I'll bring the paperwork by this afternoon," I told Dr. Stevens. "Actually, there's something else. The hospital received an anonymous donation last month. $850,000 to establish a pediatric cancer research fund in Marcus's name. Do you know anything about that?" I set down my coffee cup. "What kind of donation?" The donor specified that the money should be managed through a trust, with the interest funding research grants. The principal can only be accessed by the named trustee in the documentation. I assumed you knew about it. Can you send me those documents? Of course. I'll email them right over. An hour later, I was staring at legal paperwork I'd never seen before. The Marcus Chin Williams Pediatric Cancer Research Trust. Established by an anonymous donor. Principal amount, $850,000. Sole trustee and beneficiary controller, Amanda Williams. Me. My hands shook as I read the donor information. The money had come from my grandfather's estate. Grandpa had died 2 years earlier, leaving behind a complicated will with multiple trusts and delayed distributions. I'd assumed I wasn't mentioned in any of them. According to the documentation, Grandpa had specifically established this trust to be activated upon the death of his great-grandson Marcus, with the funds dedicated to pediatric cancer research. The trust could be used for research, or the trustee could redirect the funds for other purposes if needed. I was still processing this information when my phone rang. "Amanda, it's Mom. We need to talk." "About what?" "About being more considerate of family timing. Rachel's wedding is in 6 months and frankly, your drama yesterday was inconsiderate." "My drama?" "My son's funeral." "What do you want, Mom?" "We know about Marcus's trust fund. Dr. Stevens mentioned it to Rachel when she called the hospital yesterday. $850,000 is a substantial amount, and Rachel's wedding costs are getting out of control." I sat down slowly. "Rachel called the hospital? She wanted to send flowers for the service, but you never told us which funeral home you used. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is that Marcus is gone, and that money sitting in a trust isn't helping anyone. Rachel needs $200,000 for her dream wedding, and it only makes sense to use some of Marcus's money." "Marcus's money? Don't be dense, Amanda. That money came from Grandpa's estate, which makes it family money. Marcus can't use it now and Rachel needs it for her future. It's what Grandpa would have wanted. Grandpa specifically set up this trust for Marcus. And now Marcus is gone," Mom said flatly. "Rachel's wedding is at the Four Seasons. The venue alone is $75,000, plus flowers, photography, the dress. She's been planning this for 2 years. She's been planning it for 2 years, but you couldn't plan to attend your grandson's funeral? Amanda, don't be dramatic. We explained about the engagement party. That was already scheduled and people were counting on us. Besides, funerals are depressing, and Rachel needed us to be in a good mood for her celebration." I stared at Marcus's math workbook. Problem number 15. If you have 7 groups of 8 flowers, how many flowers do you have in total? "I'm not giving Rachel money from Marcus's trust fund." "You're being selfish," Mom snapped. "That boy is dead. Rachel is alive and getting married. The money should go to someone who can actually use it. The money is designated for pediatric cancer research." "Oh please. You can change that designation. You're the trustee. Just write a check to Rachel and be done with it." "No. Amanda, think about what you're doing. This is your sister's wedding. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Marcus's cancer research can be funded by other people. Rachel needs this money now." I hung up. 2 hours later, Rachel called. "Mom told me you're being difficult about the trust fund money." "I'm not being difficult about anything. Look, I'm sorry about Marcus, okay? I really am. But he's gone and I'm getting married in 6 months. Do you know how much a wedding costs these days? Do you know how much 18 months of cancer treatment costs? That's different. That's medical stuff. This is my wedding. This is supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and you're trying to ruin it over money that's just sitting there doing nothing. The money is designated for cancer research. Amanda, be realistic. You can change the designation. You're in charge of it. Just give me $200,000 for the wedding and put the rest toward whatever charity stuff you want. Everyone wins. Marcus wanted the money to help other kids with cancer. Marcus was 9 years old. He didn't understand money or estate planning. You're the adult. You make the adult decisions. The adult decision is to honor his wishes. His wishes. Rachel's voice got shrill. He was a little kid. Little kids wish for ponies and magic powers. Adults make practical decisions about real money. Goodbye, Rachel. Amanda, don't you dare hang up on me. This is my wedding we're talking about. The most important day of my life. You cannot be this selfish. I hung up. The next day Dad called. Your mother and sister are very upset with your attitude about the trust fund. My attitude? Amanda, let's be practical here. Rachel's wedding is costing a fortune, and that money is just sitting in an account earning interest. Marcus doesn't need it anymore and Rachel needs it now. It's simple mathematics. Simple mathematics. Don't repeat everything I say. Just answer the question. Will you write Rachel a check for $200,000 or not? No. Fine. Then we'll have our lawyer look into this trust situation. If Grandpa's estate money was used to fund it, then it's family money and Rachel has as much right to it as anyone else. Actually, Dad, let me read you something. I opened the trust documents on my laptop. The Marcus Chin Williams Pediatric Cancer Research Trust was established with specific instructions from the grantor. The funds are to be used exclusively for pediatric cancer research grants, unless the sole trustee determines that alternative use would better honor the deceased child's memory. See? Alternative use. That's exactly what we're talking about. I'm not finished. The trustee position cannot be challenged or transferred except in cases of death or legal incapacity. The grantor specifically excluded all other family members from any claim to the principal or management of the trust. Silence. Dad? Are you there? Who wrote this trust? Grandpa's estate attorney. The same one who handled his main will. This is ridiculous. Grandpa couldn't have intended for that money to be locked away forever for some research nonsense when his living great-granddaughter needs it for her wedding. Grandpa intended for the money to honor Marcus's memory through cancer research. Marcus is dead, Amanda. Dead children don't have memories to honor. Living people need real money for real expenses. Goodbye, Dad. 3 days later, I received a certified letter from a law firm I'd never heard of. My family was contesting the trust, claiming that the money rightfully belonged to Grandpa's estate and should be distributed equally among his descendants. I called the estate attorney who had handled Grandpa's will. Ms. Williams, I've been expecting your call. Your family's attorney contacted me yesterday with some very interesting theories about your grandfather's intentions. What kind of theories? They're claiming that your grandfather was mentally incompetent when he established the Marcus Trust, and that the money should revert to the main estate for equal distribution. They want $850,000 divided 4 ways. Can they do that? They can try. But I have some documents they might find enlightening. Can you come to my office this afternoon? At 3 p.m. I sat across from attorney Robert Chin, no relation despite the name, as he spread paperwork across his desk. Your grandfather was very specific about this trust, he said. He established it 2 years before Marcus's death when the boy was first diagnosed. He came to my office with medical prognosis reports and a very clear understanding of what he wanted to accomplish. He knew Marcus was going to die. He knew the survival statistics for your son's type of cancer. He wanted to ensure that Marcus's memory would contribute to research that might help other children. He also wanted to ensure that no other family members could access the money for personal use. Why? Robert Chin opened a thick file. He was very explicit about this. He'd watched your family's treatment of you over the years, particularly during Marcus's illness. He was disturbed by their priorities. What do you mean? Let me read you something he dictated for the trust documentation. Chin put on his reading glasses. It is my observation that my granddaughter Amanda has received minimal support from her family during her son's medical crisis. While she has sacrificed her career, savings, and personal well-being to care for Marcus, other family members have prioritized social events and personal expenses over providing assistance. I stared at him. There's more. He specifically referenced Rachel's engagement party being scheduled during Marcus's final weeks, and your parents' decision to prioritize that event over spending time with their dying grandson. He knew about that? He knew about all of it. Your sister asking you for money for wedding dress shopping while you were paying for experimental treatments. Your parents suggesting that you should put Marcus in a state care facility because his treatments were becoming inconvenient for family gatherings. I'd forgotten I'd told Grandpa about those conversations. He was very clear that the trust money should never be accessible to family members who had demonstrated such priorities. In fact, there's a specific clause preventing the funds from being used for weddings, parties, or what he termed frivolous social expenses. What happens if they keep fighting this legally? Robert Chin smiled. They're welcome to try. But your grandfather documented everything. He has recordings. Recordings? Your grandfather was an engineer. He recorded phone conversations with family members during Marcus's illness. He has your sister asking you for money for wedding expenses while you were at the hospital with Marcus. He has your parents discussing whether Marcus's medical equipment made family photos look depressing. My stomach dropped. They said that. Among other things. Would you like to hear the recordings? No. But I want my family to hear them. That can be arranged. The legal challenge hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I arrived at the courthouse to find my parents, Rachel, and their attorney waiting in the hallway. Rachel was wearing a designer dress and carrying a Prada bag. Amanda, let's settle this reasonably, Dad said as I approached. We'll split the money 4 ways. You can still donate your portion to cancer research if you want. That's not how trusts work. Everything can be negotiated, Rachel's attorney interjected. Trust terms can be modified when family circumstances change. No modification necessary, said Robert Chin, appearing beside me with a briefcase. Shall we go in? The hearing lasted 90 minutes. Rachel's attorney argued that Grandpa was mentally incompetent when he established the trust, and that the money should be distributed equally among his descendants for legitimate family expenses, particularly Rachel's upcoming wedding. Robert Chin played 3 recordings. The first was Rachel calling me 2 days after Marcus's cancer recurrence, asking if I could loan her $5,000 for a destination bachelorette party because Marcus's medical drama had made me so depressing to be around that she needed a fun trip to balance out the negative energy. The second was my parents discussing whether they should ask me to move Marcus's hospital bed out of their living room during his recovery from surgery because it would ruin the aesthetic for Rachel's engagement photo shoot. The third was Mom telling Dad that they should skip Marcus's birthday party because celebrating a dying child is morbid, and they didn't want to be associated with that kind of negative energy during Rachel's wedding planning period. Rachel started crying during the second recording. By the third recording, her attorney was shuffling papers and looking uncomfortable. The judge reviewed the trust documents, listened to the recordings, and declared the trust legally sound and uncontestable. The grantor's intentions are clear, she said. The trust funds are designated for pediatric cancer research, and the trustee has sole discretion over their use. The challenge is dismissed. After the hearing, my family waited for me in the parking lot. Those recordings were taken out of context, Mom said immediately. What context makes those statements acceptable? We were stressed, Rachel sobbed. Wedding planning is incredibly stressful and we weren't thinking clearly. Marcus was dying. We know that, Dad said. But we couldn't put our entire lives on hold indefinitely. Rachel's wedding was already planned and deposits were paid. Your grandson was dying and you were worried about deposits. Amanda, you're twisting everything, Mom said. We love Marcus. We loved Marcus. But he's gone now and life has to continue. Rachel's wedding is happening whether you help or not. The question is whether you want to be part of this family or not. I looked at my sister, still crying in her designer dress, thinking about the $850,000 she'd counted on spending on her wedding. I thought about my parents who'd planned an engagement party during their grandson's final weeks. I thought about Marcus who'd saved every dollar he ever received to help other kids with cancer. The trust money will go to pediatric cancer research, I said. All of it. Exactly as Marcus wanted. You're making a mistake, Dad said. Family is more important than strangers' kids. Marcus was family too. I drove home and went to Marcus's room, which I'd kept exactly as he'd left it. his baseball gloves on the dresser, his astronomy books stacked beside the bed, his drawing of our family on the wall, where I was labeled Best Mom Ever in purple crayon. The trust money would fund research grants for the next 20 years. Every time a researcher received a Marcus Chin Williams grant, they'd know that a 9-year-old boy who fought cancer had wanted to help other children fight it too. Rachel's wedding would happen at the Four Seasons. She'd find the money somewhere else, probably by taking out loans against her future inheritance or asking her wealthy fiancé's family for help. My parents would attend and smile for photos and pretend their priorities had always been reasonable. I would not be invited to the wedding. 2 weeks later, I received Rachel's wedding invitation in the mail. My name was not on the guest list, but there was a handwritten note. Amanda, you're welcome to attend if you reconsider your position about the trust fund. The offer for $200,000 still stands if you change your mind before the RSVP deadline. We'd love to have you there, but we understand if you choose money over family. Rachel. I threw the invitation away and wrote a check to the Children's Hospital for $50,000 from the trust's first annual disbursement. The memo line read, "In memory of Marcus Chin Williams, who wanted to help other kids fight cancer." Marcus had been right about the 7 times tables. 7 times 8 is equal to 56. He'd figured it out 2 days before he died, proud that he could finally do the whole page without help. The research funded by his trust would help 56 children in its first year alone. It started on a Tuesday afternoon in 2014. I was 23, fresh out of college, living in my small apartment and trying to figure out my career. That's when my phone buzzed with a frantic call from my sister Emma. "Hey, can you watch the kids for just 1 hour? I have this emergency work meeting. I'll be back before dinner, I promise." Emma was 28 then, with 4 children ranging from 2 to 8 years old. Tyler, Madison, Chloe, and baby Lucas. Her husband had left her 6 months earlier, and she was struggling to keep everything together. Family helps family, right? That's what Mom always taught us. 1 hour turned into 6 hours. Then overnight. Then the entire weekend. "I got called into another meeting," she'd text. "Can you keep them until Sunday? You're so good with kids." Sunday became Monday. Monday became a full week. The emergency work meetings multiplied like rabbits. Each time Emma had a different excuse. Client crisis. Overtime opportunity. Training seminar. Networking event. Always something that would set her up for success and benefit the kids in the long run. My small 1-bedroom apartment transformed into a daycare center overnight. I bought bunk beds with my savings. Filled my refrigerator with goldfish crackers and juice boxes. Learned the intricate art of braiding an 8-year-old's hair at 6 a.m. before school. Baby Lucas was still in diapers, crying through the night while I rocked him back to sleep, then dragged myself to my entry-level marketing job the next morning on 3 hours of sleep. "Emma, when are you picking them up?" I'd ask during our brief phone calls. "Soon. This week has been crazy. You're amazing with them though. They love you so much. Just a few more days until things settle down." A few more days became a few more weeks. Weeks became months. Before I knew it, I was buying them school supplies, attending parent-teacher conferences, and explaining to concerned teachers why Aunt Jenny was always the one dropping them off and picking them up. Emma would visit occasionally, sweeping in like a Disney princess with arms full of toys and promises of trips to Disneyland, once work calms down. She'd stay for an hour, take selfies with the kids for her Instagram, then disappear again with another excuse about urgent business matters. "Where's Mommy going?" little Chloe would ask, watching Emma's car pull away. "She'll be back soon, sweetheart," I'd lie, knowing it would be weeks before we saw her again. The financial strain was crushing. For kids eat a lot. They need clothes that fit, school supplies, medicine when they're sick, and activities to keep them occupied. My entry-level salary barely covered my own expenses, let alone supporting 4 additional people. I started working freelance projects in the evenings after the kids went to bed, designing logos and websites for extra income. Family gatherings became particularly painful. Emma would show up looking refreshed and successful, talking about her thriving real estate career and new condo. She'd hug the kids and play the devoted mother role for a few hours while I sat exhausted in the corner, dark circles under my eyes. "Emma's doing so well for herself," relatives would say. "She's really turned her life around after the divorce. And Jenny, you're such a good aunt, helping out occasionally, they'd add, completely unaware that I hadn't had a full night's sleep in 2 years. Emma never corrected them. She'd smile and nod, accepting praise for her successful co-parenting arrangement, while I bit my tongue. By year 3, the kids called me Mama Jenny. Tyler, now 11, had stopped asking when his real mom was coming home. Madison, 9, would get angry when Emma visited because it meant disruption to our routine. Chloe, 7, had attachment issues and would cry for hours after Emma left. Lucas, now 5, barely remembered living anywhere else. I enrolled in night school to finish my business degree, studying textbooks while helping with homework, writing papers during Saturday morning cartoons. The kids adapted to our unconventional life. They learned to be quiet during my video conference calls, to help each other with simple tasks, to understand that Mama Jenny worked very hard to take care of everyone. Why can't we live with real mommy? Madison asked one evening while I helped her with math homework. This is just temporary, I said, the same lie I'd been telling for 3 years. She's working hard to get a better job so she can take care of you. But Emma's social media told a different story. Weekend trips to wine country. Date nights at expensive restaurants. Shopping sprees and spa days. Always alone or with new boyfriends, never with her children. Year 4 brought new challenges. Tyler needed braces. Madison wanted to join the soccer team. Chloe required speech therapy. Lucas started asking difficult questions about why other kids lived with their mommies but he lived with Aunt Jenny. The costs kept mounting while my own dreams of graduate school, travel, or even dating remained on permanent hold. Emma's visits became more sporadic. Sometimes she'd go 3 months without seeing the kids, then show up unannounced expecting them to drop everything and worship her. She'd criticize my parenting choices, complain about their behavior, then leave again when the reality of actual childcare became too demanding. "You're letting them watch too much TV," she'd say during her brief visits. "You try managing 4 kids' homework, bath time and bedtime routine by yourself every single night," I'd respond. "Don't be dramatic. You know I'm grateful for the help." Help. After 4 years of full-time parenting, she still called it help. The breaking point came during year 5. I was 28, watching my college friends get married, buy houses, and start their own families while I remained trapped in a life I never chose. Emma announced she was moving to a bigger city for an amazing career opportunity. "It's temporary," she assured me. "Just a year or 2 until I get established. You don't mind keeping the kids a little longer, right? They're so settled with you." A little longer. 5 years was already a little longer. "Emma, I can't keep doing this. I've put my entire life on hold. These are your children." "You're being selfish," she snapped. "I'm working hard to build a better future for them. You think raising kids is hard? Try building a career as a single mother. At least you get to see them grow up." At least I get to see them grow up. As if I should be grateful for sacrificing my 20s to raise her children while she pursued her dreams. Years 6 through 8 blurred together in a haze of school events, medical appointments, homework supervision, and sleepless nights when someone had nightmares or stomach bugs. I advanced in my career despite the constraints, eventually becoming a marketing manager with flexible work-from-home options. The kids adapted to our rhythm. I was their stability, their constant, their real parent in every way except biologically. Emma's visits became holidays-only affairs. Christmas and birthdays when she'd arrive with expensive gifts and expect instant gratitude. She'd take the kids for a few hours, return them cranky and overstimulated, then disappear for months. The kids learned not to get excited about her promises because they were rarely kept. "Why does mommy say she'll take us to the zoo but never does?" Lucas asked when he was 8. "Some people have trouble keeping promises," I explained, trying not to poison them against their mother while also protecting them from constant disappointment. Year 9 brought teenagers. Tyler was 17, Madison 15, Chloe 13 and Lucas 11. They needed different things now. Emotional support through first heartbreaks. Guidance about college applications. Help navigating social pressures. I attended every school play, every basketball game, every parent-teacher conference. I was the emergency contact, the permission slip signer, the person who knew their friends, their fears, their dreams. Emma remained a stranger who showed up occasionally with criticism and demands for gratitude. "They're so disrespectful when I try to parent them," she complained after Tyler refused to hug her during her last visit. "You can't parent someone you see twice a year," I replied. "I'm their mother. That should mean something." Being a mother means more than biology, Emma. It means being present. She didn't understand. She'd created these 4 beautiful human beings, then walked away from the hard work of actually raising them. She wanted the title without the responsibility, the credit without the sacrifice. By year 10 I was 33 years old. I'd never been married, never traveled internationally, never lived alone, never had the freedom to make spontaneous decisions. Every choice I made had to consider 4 other people. Every dollar I earned went toward someone else's needs. Every dream I had took a backseat to homework help and soccer practices. The kids were my life and I loved them fiercely. But they weren't supposed to be my children. I was supposed to be the fun aunt who visited on weekends and sent birthday cards. Instead, I'd become their sole parent while Emma got to play the role of exciting visitor. The final straw came on a Wednesday morning in March 2024. Tyler was preparing for college applications, Madison was dealing with teenage drama, Chloe was struggling with anxiety, and Lucas was having behavioral issues at school. I was juggling work deadlines while managing 4 different crises when Emma called. "I need you to bring the kids to me this weekend. I'm getting married and my fiancé wants to meet them." 10 years. 10 years of no support, minimal visits and sporadic phone calls. Now she wanted to parade them in front of her new man like accessories. Emma, Tyler has SAT prep this weekend. Madison has a basketball tournament. They can't just drop everything. "You're being difficult. I'm their mother. I should be able to see my children when I want. You are their mother. So start acting like one." What's that supposed to mean? It means you don't get to abandon them for a decade and then demand they rearrange their lives for your convenience. "I never abandoned them. I've been working hard too." Stop. Just stop with the excuses. You've been working hard on your career, your social life, your new relationships. You haven't been working hard on being their mother. You're being cruel. "I do my best." Your best is showing up twice a year with gifts and expecting forgiveness? The call ended with Emma screaming about my ingratitude and threatening to reclaim her children whenever she wanted. I stared at the phone, shaking with 10 years of suppressed anger and resentment. That evening, I sat the kids down for a conversation we should have had years ago. "I need to tell you something important. I've loved raising you, but I was never supposed to be your primary parent. I was supposed to help your mom, not replace her." Tyler, now 17 and wise beyond his years, looked at me with understanding. "We know, Jenny. We've always known. You've been more of a mom to us than she ever was," Madison added. "What happens now?" Chloe asked, anxiety creeping into her voice. "Now I make a choice. I can keep enabling your mother by allowing this arrangement to continue, or I can force her to step up and be the parent you deserve." Lucas, now 13 and struggling with identity issues about his absent mother, asked the question that broke my heart. "Are you going to leave us too?" "I'm not leaving you. I'm giving your mother a chance to be your parent. If she can't handle that responsibility, we'll figure out a legal arrangement that protects you." The next morning I did something I should have done 10 years earlier. I packed 4 suitcases with their belongings, loaded them into my car and drove to Emma's office building. She worked in commercial real estate now, making excellent money according to her social media posts. The kids were confused but trusting. We'd had conversations about their mother's absence over the years, and they understood this wasn't about them being unwanted. I walked into Emma's sleek office building for children in tow, and asked the receptionist to call Emma down to the lobby. She appeared 10 minutes later looking polished and professional in a designer suit. "What are you doing here? Why do you have the kids?" "I'm returning your children," I said calmly. 10 years ago you asked me to watch them for 1 hour. I'm done watching them. They're yours now. You can't just. I can and I am. These are your children, Emma. You gave birth to them. You're legally responsible for them. I've been a free babysitter for a decade, but that ends today. Emma's face went through several emotions. Shock, anger, panic, then back to anger. You can't do this to me. I have a career. I have meetings. You have children. 4 of them. They need a parent, not an absent visitor who shows up with gifts twice a year. Tyler stepped forward, tall and mature at 17. "Mom, we don't know you. You've been gone our whole lives." "I haven't been gone. I've been working to provide for you." "Jenny provided for us," Madison said quietly. "You just showed up sometimes." Emma looked around the lobby, realizing her co-workers were witnessing this scene. Her professional image was cracking in real time. "Fine," she said through gritted teeth. "But this is temporary. When you realize how hard it actually is, don't come crying to me." "I've known how hard it is for 10 years, I replied. "The difference is I didn't run away from it. I hugged each child, promising to stay in their lives but explaining that their mother needed to step up now." Tyler understood. Madison was worried but supportive. Chloe cried but knew this was necessary. Lucas was scared but trusted that I wouldn't abandon them completely. I handed Emma the car seats, diaper bag which I still kept for emergencies, and a folder containing 10 years of medical records, school information and documentation she'd never bothered to maintain. "Their pediatrician is Dr. Martinez. Tyler has a nut allergy. Madison is lactose intolerant. Chloe has anxiety and sees Dr. Peterson on Thursdays. Lucas needs structure and consistent bedtimes. All the information is in this folder." Emma stared at the folder like it was written in a foreign language. I walked away, got in my car and drove home to my empty apartment for the first time in 10 years. The calls started within hours. "They won't stop crying. Lucas wet the bed and I don't know what to do. Madison says she hates me." Tyler locked himself in his room. I didn't answer. For 10 years I'd enabled Emma's abandonment by making it consequence-free. Every time she walked away I was there to catch the pieces. Every time she made promises she couldn't keep, I was there to manage the disappointment. Every time her children needed a parent, I filled that role while she played the part of successful career woman. No more. 3 days later, Emma showed up at my apartment looking haggard and desperate. "I can't do this. You have to take them back." "No. Please. I'm not good at this. I don't know how to be a mother." "You learn. The same way I learned 10 years ago when you dumped them on me. That's different. You're naturally good with kids. I wasn't naturally good at anything. I was 23 years old with no experience. I learned because I had to, because there were 4 children who needed someone to step up. I'll pay you. Whatever you want. This isn't about money, Emma. This is about you taking responsibility for the children you created." "But my career." "Millions of parents manage careers and children. Figure it out." Emma left angry, threatening legal action and claiming I'd kidnapped her children. I documented everything over the years. Her absences, my expenses, my role as primary caregiver. Any legal investigation would reveal the truth about who'd been parenting these children. A week later I received a call from Tyler. "Jenny, Mom hired a nanny but she doesn't know anything about us. Can you tell her about my college applications?" I had to make a difficult decision. I could step back in and rescue everyone, or I could hold firm and force Emma to figure out her own parenting. "Tyler, you need to tell your mother about your college applications. She's your parent. She needs to learn about your life. But she doesn't understand. Then help her understand. You're almost an adult. You can advocate for yourself and your siblings." It was the hardest phone call I'd ever made. Every instinct screamed at me to fix everything, to swoop in and solve their problems. But 10 years of enabling had to end somewhere. Over the following months, I received updates through social media and occasional calls. Emma struggled initially, hiring and firing 3 different nannies. She had to reduce her work hours. She missed important business trips. Her social life disappeared under the weight of actual parenting responsibilities. But slowly something shifted. She started attending Tyler's basketball games. She learned about Madison's friend drama. She figured out how to help Chloe with her anxiety. She discovered that Lucas needed consistency and patience, not expensive gifts. The transformation wasn't instant or perfect. Emma made mistakes, lost her temper and called me crying more times than I could count. But she was finally learning what I'd known for 10 years. Being a parent means showing up every day, not just when it's convenient. 6 months later I met them for dinner. The kids looked healthier, more relaxed. They were still adjusting to having their actual mother present, but the panic and confusion had been replaced with cautious hope. Emma looked exhausted but different. More grounded. More present. "I never realized," she said quietly while the kids played at a nearby arcade. "I thought providing money was enough. I thought someone else could handle the daily stuff while I built a career." "Parenting is the daily stuff," I replied. "I wasted so much time. They grew up without me. You can't change the past. But you can be present for their future." She nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you for forcing me to step up. I hated you for months, but thank you. As I drove home that night to my quiet apartment, I reflected on the past 10 years. I'd sacrificed my 20s to raise children who weren't mine. I'd missed opportunities, relationships, and experiences that I could never get back. But I'd also helped 4 amazing humans become the people they were meant to be. I'd given them stability during the most formative years of their lives. And finally, I'd forced their mother to become the parent they deserved. The kids still call me Mama Jenny. I'm still involved in their lives, but now as the aunt I was always supposed to be. Emma handles the day-to-day parenting, the school meetings, the bedtime routines, the endless cycle of laundry and lunches and homework help. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if I'd said no on that first Tuesday afternoon in 2014. Would I be married by now? Would I have traveled the world? Would I have climbed higher in my career without the constraints of 4 dependents? I'll never know. But I do know this. Sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes helping someone means stopping the help that enables their dysfunction. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is forcing them to step up and become who they're supposed to be. Emma is finally a mother. Tyler is heading to college with his actual parents' support. Madison, Chloe, and Lucas have the stability they always deserved. And I have my life back 10 years later than planned, but with the knowledge that I helped raise 4 incredible humans who will always be part of my heart. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away and let people face the consequences of their choices. It took me 10 years to learn that lesson, but it was worth every difficult moment.